There are two potential starters for the New York Knicks that could unlock one of the great offenses in NBA history. I'm going to tell you who they are next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to the New York Knicks. My name is Gavin Schall. I am a New York City native. I'm a credentialed media member that's been covering the team for nearly a decade, and I'm your Saturday co-host of the Locked On NBA podcast. This is Locked On Knicks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your daily podcast on the New York Knicks, giving the most detailed insight on your favorite team at least 5 days a week, so be sure to join thousands of other Knicks fans in subscribing on both YouTube and your favorite podcast platform for the best insight on your favorite team. I think this is the best time to go ahead and do that because I am really, really excited about the direction the show is heading. More on that in the next couple of days. On today's show, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Xavier Justin, aka XJ, the co-host of the Hot Hand Theory podcast, and we talk why starting Deuce McBride is ultimately the best choice for the New York Knicks, but also why it's not a no-brainer and why, even though we're both big fans, Deuce fiends, if you will, we acknowledge that there are more than reasonable arguments for ultimately not starting him and maybe starting someone else. And one of those people we go through, maybe it's crazy, but one of those people we go through is Guerschon Yabusele. Does he have a dark horse case to be the New York Knicks' fifth starter? We get into all that next right here on Locked On Knicks. All right, guys, as promised, one of the all-time great Locked On Knicks guests, XJ, is back, the co-host of the fantastic Hot Hand Theory podcast. Check them out wherever you can find podcasts covering the NBA, covering the New York Knicks. Joy to talk to each and every time. Buddy, how's it going? How's your summer been?
Oh, man, Gavin, I'm so excited to be here, man. If people are Hot Hand Theory listeners, they know that we've been dormant basically over the summer. I've had a lot going on over the summer, but I'm so excited now to be back talking hoops. This is like my first appearance on a show talking hoops in like over 2 months. So I'm pumped to talk Knicks and happy to be here with you as always. Yeah, really excited. Let's do it.
It's as we're recording this, it's Knicks Media Day. It's XJ Media Day. It's all aligning. We are talking a subject that I'm passionate about. I know you're very passionate about, and that is the Knicks' fifth starter. We had CBS's Sam Quinn on the other week, and we kind of touched on it, did a primer, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to just leave the conversation there. I want to do a really deep dive because I think it deserves a really deep dive. And we can start off with, I think, our preferred guy, it's safe to say, in Deuce McBride. I'm going to leave it to you, man. Do you want to, we're going to structure these. We're going to make an elevator pitch for each guy. We're going to ask some big questions about each guy. Do you want to make the elevator pitch while you've been advocating for, I got to give you credit. If someone else was arguing for it earlier, I didn't see it. The second the Karl-Anthony Towns trade was made, you planted your flag. Our buddy Jeff, your co-host at Hot Hand Theory, planted his flag. Deuce McBride should be starting. I think we're both on the same page that the numbers ultimately bore out that likely would have been the right decision. The Knicks never went that direction. Why do you, presumably, I'm speaking for you here, believe that's the right choice heading into the new season?
No, I definitely appreciate the hat tip there. I definitely planted my flag in the Deuce McBride camp for being the Knicks' fifth starter immediately after the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. I do want to say, just for our audience listening right now, there are some really good cases for a few of the other people that we're going to talk about. So I am going to say that I do think it should be Deuce. I don't want to bury the lead there. But there are some really, really, really good cases for the other guys and maybe other guys that people aren't really thinking about as much right now. So stay tuned for that. For now, for Deuce McBride, obviously the biggest asset that Deuce has is his shooting at the guard position off of Jalen Brunson. That's the biggest case. You can run a 5-out offense. Not only can you run a 5-out offense, you can run it with elite speed, heavy movement, Princeton-style offense like Mike Brown likes to run. You have elite off-ball gravity everywhere when you have Deuce McBride on the court. He was actually second on the team in off-ball gravity last year behind Karl-Anthony Towns was Deuce McBride. That has a significant impact on your offense and an exponential compounding impact when you have all 5 guys who can shoot on the court, something that I talk about religiously. I know you talk about a lot as well, Gavin. So, and You mentioned last year's kind of lineup data. This is something that we both talked about a bunch. The Knicks' 5 best lineups over 100 possessions last season all had Deuce McBride in them. It's just kind of, I won't say it's a no-brainer, but it's a no-brainer that this would be a really strong and impactful lineup if they put Deuce in there. Do you want me to talk about the case against Deuce, or do you want to kind of kick that off?
Yeah, here I'll make the case for, and then I'll throw it right back to you.
Okay.
Because we are on this, obviously on the same page. The spacing is incredibly impactful. I just think and look, we both believe, and maybe it's an argument for potentially starting someone else and getting benefits in other areas, that Mike Brown is going to run more creative offense than Tom Thibodeau, maybe have higher rates of organized offense, and maybe you can offset the lack of shooting with other guys, whether it's Mitchell Robinson, whether it's Josh Hart, or whether it's a mystery fourth option that we'll actually talk about second here. But Deuce makes things very easy on offense, right? You actually, like, if you were going to play a Tom Thibodeau style, which is just very isolation heavy and kind of like, all right, Jalen, you take the reins, buddy. You're going to go cook. Last season, Jalen Brunson had the ball in his hands. I think ESPN had the stat. It was something like 9 minutes per game that led the NBA. If you were going to continue to lean into that, you want to make life as easy on him as possible. You want to take some tread off his tires, because the guy just took an absolute beating last year. And in some ways, I almost wonder if it was a blessing in disguise when he turned his ankle against the Lakers, because that was 15 games. He wasn't hitting the court over and over and over again. And I'm not saying that wouldn't still be the case with Deuce out there. Obviously, teams are still going to be physical with him. There will still at times be bigs around the rim. But the idea of Jalen operating in like a truly 5-out system with that kind of spacing, like, I think the benefits to your best player, both from a health perspective and an efficiency perspective, like we already saw his field goal percentage to the rim. I think it jumped like something like 4 to 6% last year. I don't quite remember the number. Like, we already saw Jalen's life get easier with Cat, even if it wasn't optimally used. If you combine the idea of having genuine 5-out spacing, and I talk about this all the time, but Deuce is maybe not quite a Dante DiVincenzo level deep shooter, but he's a different type of threat compared to OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, who are towing the line, the closeouts cross court, the closeouts to like recover, or rotations to recover to the rim to cover Jalen Brunson if he beats his man, or if he wins in a pick and roll situation, are just dramatically harder when Deuce is hovering like 26, 27 feet from the basket. And you have to respect that, because he's that level of shooter. And you always note this, and you're always really good to note this. It's just as much of an argument on the other end of the floor, where Mikal Bridges like struggled last season as a screen navigator. I think you guys were the ones who noted it. Like, out of like large sample screen navigators, Mikal was worse in the NBA last year. Deuce, on the other hand, a 99th percentile screen navigator per B-ball index. And to me, that is just as much of an argument for him starting as the defense is that, like, when you have Karl-Anthony Towns, who, sure, Mike Brown will mix up the coverages a little bit more, right? He'll blitz a little bit more. Maybe there'll be a little bit more zone. You just need someone who is special at getting around screens. And yes, there are primary ball handlers, like with their size, with their strength, with their skill, that could give Deuce trouble, as good of a defender as he is. And there are times like you'll feel small defensively, right? Not having Josh Hart's rebounding out there, presumably. Deuce makes up for it, I think, with his ability to get around screens and be a point of attack defender. And presumably, if you're still starting Mikal Bridges in this scenario, free Mikal Bridges up to be a free safety, where we saw him just excel at, frankly, like, it felt like an all defense level at times against the Boston Celtics. So that is my main argument. You mentioned the lineup data. I'll throw this out there. I've said it a couple of times, but I'll note it again. An interesting version of this is Deuce not in there for Josh Hart, but in there for Mikal Bridges. Last season, that lineup, again, it was small sample size. I believe it was under 200 possessions on the season, but out of NBA lineups that played at least 100 possessions, that had the second best net rating of any lineup in the NBA, plus 43.7. So that's an interesting version of that. And all of this, I think we're on the same page, is advocating, even if he doesn't start, we're both on the same page that we want to see Deuce out there a lot more, and Deuce playing with the starters or playing with lineups that are close to the starting lineup a whole lot more. All right, guys, when we come back with XJ, this is painful to do because I am a fan. We talk about the drawbacks of starting Deuce McBride. That coming up next here on Locked On Knicks. But first, I want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. What I love about it is I find it very painful to watch NFL football over the last decade plus, and that is because I'm unlucky enough to be a fan of the New York Giants. Yes, I have 2 Super Bowls in my life. Jets fans, you can't say that. Bills fans, sorry, you can't say that. It's pretty cool, and yet Our offensive line has sucked for years. Our quarterback has sucked for years. Jets fans, you can relate to those two. And I need to find a way to just get a little bit more invested in my Sundays, and FanDuel's absolutely the way to do that. With that special offer, again, if you bet $5, you win up to $300. Not up to, you just get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It adds a little bit more juice to my Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Yeah, you hit on all of the great points. And I think just to add and punctuate that before we talk about kind of the case against for the lineup data, I just want everybody to think about the fact that for lineup data, it's definitely a function largely and primarily a function of the players on the court, but it's also a function of the system that's being deployed with those players on the court. And so some of that lineup data, I think we'll see some shifts when we're moving from Tom Thibodeau to Mike Brown. And I think that, for instance, if guys are not being deployed optimally in their best role for them, especially like defensively, we may see some of those, disparities in terms of Deuce for Mikal Bridges looking a lot better than Deuce for Josh Hart. But like you said, Deuce in his correct role, in my opinion, is strictly point of attack, guarding on the ball at the top, and Mikal Bridges playing more of that safety role. I think we can see better optimization among those players if Mike Brown is able to figure out how to deploy those guys to the best of their ability. So you could see even better returns than we already saw with Deuce McBride in those lineups if they're deployed in even better, kind of more optimal situations with a new coaching staff. The case against, I think there's not like, I think there is a decent case against Deuce McBride. And I want to say one thing that is probably not talked about very much is that Deuce is not really a great passer. Like, he can be a decent connector, but I think he's a bit slow on his reads, and he has a harder time making anything more than kind of straightforward passes for the 5-out system that Brown likes to run, the kind of heavy movement motion offense that he likes to run. You kind of need to be good at dribbling, passing, and shooting. And Deuce is obviously really, really good at shooting, but not as good as the other two. And I think his passing could be an issue. I also think his finishing could be an issue. So the biggest thing that I think he needs to improve coming into this year is his finish. He just needs to be a more reliable finisher at the rim. He was really, really terrible. The data shows that he was like one of the worst finishers in the league last season. I'm hopeful that that's just a blip, and that, because he wasn't this bad any other season prior, but that is a consideration as well. And then, like you also kind of alluded to, there will be this, rebounding hit that is likely to happen. I do think it's overblown. People are worried about the Knicks being so small and the rebounding, and you take Josh Hart out. How are you going to, rebound the ball well? I think there's some things that will offset that in terms of like spacing allows you to kind of neutralize the other team in terms of like your opportunities to get offensive rebounds. So I think there will be some things that can happen where the hit won't be probably as big as people are thinking it would be. But I do think, and the data bears it out, there is some of a rebounding slide when Deuce McBride is in the lineup, especially with the smaller lineups that we're kind of talking about, as it would be in the starting lineup. And then obviously doesn't add rim protection. Leaving Towns and OG as your primary rim protectors is signing up for maybe a mediocre defense and the rebounding issues that we talked about. But I do think, as you do, his point of attack defense makes up in a lot of cases for the rim shortcomings of that unit that they might deploy. So there's some considerations there. That's the only thing these are the things to me that doesn't make it a slam dunk, like runaway for Deuce McBride. But, I do think that that's the best option for the Knicks, especially starting out the season.
Yeah, I think we're 100% on the same page there. To your point on his finishing, I did a Deuce player review earlier this summer. I'm going to apologize for not inviting you on that one. I know you would have had a lot of fun.
It's all good.
Hopefully next year. But he had 0 and 1s the entire season, which is like one of those.
I didn't know that.
That's similar to Mikal when you're like, why has he shot one free throw in the month of January? And you just look at it and you're like, that's not good. That was concerning to me. And he's always felt like sporadic, maybe is the right word, as a finisher. Like, he's just out of control, turn the corner, right? Like he's a good athlete, and he'll occasionally shock you and like get up and dunk on someone, but for his height, and this is the reason why he was like a second round pick. Like he's not like an elite vertical athlete, like not an elite like north south explosive athlete, and like he has a lot of trouble turning the corner and getting a clean look. Even in transition, like he had a lot of issues slowing down. Like there was some stat out there that at one point this year he missed like 50 straight layups, and I never researched or double checked that. So probably bad journalism even bringing it up on the podcast. But I remember like hearing that, I was like, that is insane.
That doesn't sound real. I gotta say, I don't know. We're gonna fact check that one.
It doesn't sound real, but it was almost.
But the fact that we can believe it is indicative of an issue, I think.
that's where I was there. And then the other like slight concern offensively that I'm intrigued for him is he shot like disproportionately well from mid-range last season. He was 49% up from 41% the season before, and he did it on more shots. And maybe that's an indicator, an improvement of skill. He's like 33 of 67 from mid-range. I do think, especially if he's starting, that's a shot he'll need to have in his bag. Like if he's being scouted more closely and teams are running him off the 3-point line, and we know the finishing issues, you need to have that in between game, and you have to be so efficient. Even if he's only taking one of those a game, like I think it's important that like he's able to hit them and like occasionally get hot. And especially like, presumably if that's your starting lineup, you're planning on that being your starting lineup in the conference finals and the NBA finals. Like the margins are going to get really, really small against like the Cleveland Cavaliers of the world, against the Oklahoma City Thunder of the world. And I'm curious to see like if he can maintain, like I want to use a football analogy and say like his down by down efficiency. Like is there any drop off when he's guarding better players every possession, when he's being guarded when he's guarding and being guarded by better players every single possession? Like he's never had to deal with that in his NBA career. I will note the one encouraging thing on the finishing. I looked up the numbers, and it essentially came down to like a difference of 9 total finishes from 1 year, because the year before he was 63% at the rim, which was 59th percentile. Last season, 52%, 16th percentile. He gets to the rim so infrequently. That's like a total of 9 misses. So that part of it is encouraging. The discouraging part is, and you know this better than I do, there should be a trade-off in a positive way. If your volume's low, your efficiency should go up. And he had very low volume and very low efficiency at the rim. So that certainly remains a concern. I think it's an interesting conversation that maybe we can get to the Mitchell Robinson point of this, like how it translates against the better teams in the league. And do you want to have someone like Mitch when you're playing the Cavs? And is that a better matchup for you? I will note the one final positive. He had like an F grade in shot quality last year. That'll go way up playing under Mike Brown, playing in the starting lineup, or excuse me, 3-point shot quality last year. So he shot 38% from 3. I think with the starters, he's potentially like a 41+% 3-point shooter, which would be a game changer for the New York Knicks. But we spent a lot of time at Deuce, as we expected we would. Before we get to the two favorites, I wanted to target a dark horse and go over Guerschon Yabusele. I don't know how much XJ, like you've buoyed this idea around in your head before we started this episode, but is that something you've considered? Like, what I to be clear, like, I think we're on the same page as this. I don't really think Mike Brown's going to start Deuce McBride. I think it's an even longer shot that he would start Yabu, but I'm fascinated by the idea. Is that crazy?
It's crazy, and I love it. I think I would just come out and say it. Like, obviously, I'm in the Deuce camp. And I'll also say I'm doing a lot of burying the lead here. That's fine. I don't think I would be in favor of starting Yabusele, but I really like the idea of it, because here's what I'll say, and this is relevant for the rest of the 3 guys that we're going to talk about, including Yabusele. In general, I really like doubling down on strengths one way or the other. So instead of watering yourself down in either direction when it comes to, lineups and units, like an example would be like, let's try to get the rebounding from Josh Hart, but lose the shooting threat. And let's try to get the shooting threat, but from Towns and lose the defense. Like, to me, that's a less effective approach than let's just have a ridiculously elite shooting lineup with Deuce and Towns, or let's just have a ridiculously elite rebounding lineup with Hart and Mitch. I'd rather double down on strengths. And I think that's like, this is a general rule, of course, and there's different situations, but I think when you overwhelm a team in one area, there's a lot of what we'll call like externalities that is hard to account for. So the opponent then needs to adjust their strategy to deal with something that they don't see often, which really changes the calculus. So I really like the idea of just doubling down. And that's what starting Yabusele would do. It would really, really double down in one area and really, really destroy you in another area. We talked a little bit about the kind of Princeton-style offense, which requires the positions to be skilled at passing, dribbling, shooting. Yabusele fits extremely well. Excellent shot maker from basically all spots on the court. Besides, he doesn't have like a floater at all. But besides that, excellent shot maker from everywhere. Reliable shooter. Surprisingly, an excellent deep 3-point shooter, which is critical for spacing if you're going to put him at the 4, or mix and match Towns or him at the 4 and 5. But you put Brunson, Towns, and Yabusele all on the court together, you have an elite mix of shooting and shot making. Brunson and Towns, obviously, we know are 2 of the best shot makers in the entire league. Towns is probably a top 3 to 4 deep 3-point shooter in the league. And Yabusele just emphasizes that mix. He brings that shooting, but he also, like Deuce McBride does, but he also brings a physicality. So you have Mike Brown, who likes to run like double drags with the 4 and 5, basically, just meaning like the 4 and 5 positions are screening to get the other guys open, typically wings, or if the wings come off those screens and get covered or get overplayed, then they themselves, the 4 and 5, will get themselves open. So now we're talking at the 4 and 5 with Yabu and Towns. Now the threats are just overwhelming. You have double drag screens, and either they're getting open shots, and those are either great or elite shooters, but you also have big bodies who are setting those screens, which can make a significant difference. I just think that is such an interesting look in terms of like double bigs who can shoot at a really high level and from range, that you would just get a lot of advantages that we wouldn't even consider, just thinking about it on paper. So I think that's a really sneaky, interesting potential look from the offensive standpoint. And we'll talk about the drawbacks that make it, to me, probably not possible. And that, to me, is basically all on the defense. But that's where I'm coming from the, like, it's exciting to me just thinking about an offense with Guerschon Yabusele starting next to Karl-Anthony Towns. So that's why it excites me.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, this is advocating that we get some minutes with those two together, which I'm sure we inevitably will, especially if Mitchell Robinson starts. We'll probably get a lot of Yabu Cat minutes together on the bench. But I'll make the argument. I've talked about this before on here, but 40% above the break 3-point shooter with 84th percentile volume for a big. So he's just like a legit capital S shooter last year, right? Like there wasn't, I mean, maybe it drops way down and this looks dumb. Like he does only have a 1-year sample size of shooting like that in the NBA. So we have to see, but it looked very real last year, right? As real as it could look, it pretty much did. 71% at the rim. That's good, not great for a big, but like given his size, that makes sense. Those double drags, or like they run like horns, like a stagger screen. Like I like how like he feels like a very European style big in that. I don't even know if that's the right term for it, because like American bigs do this too, but like he can give you like that quick hitting, like rolling action that the Knicks have really only gotten from Precious Achiuwa over the last couple of years. And for a team, like when we talk about pace with the Knicks, generally people are like saying they got to get on transition more. They got to get more fast break points. So Yabu's excellent at that, right? He is a force. He is a freight train coming downhill, trying to eat the rim every time he's in transition. And that is awesome. That is fun. Little Camp Scattaboo action for my Giants fans out there. Like that is going to be really, really exciting. But in the half court, he also plays with that pace, and his ability to, like with Brunson, like curling off a handoff to just fly up, set a screen, and then like quick, like roll to the rim, right? And ghost the screen and just like have a quick hitting layup or dunk off that. The Knicks just, Cat is too lumbering. Mitch, at this point in his career, at his age, with the weight gained, is a little too lumbering to do that and isn't mobile enough to play on the perimeter. Like, I love that element to the offense, and the idea that you can access that with Cat, to your point, is one of the best spacers in basketball, drawing the center away from the rim. Like, I think the Knicks could feast in that. And even if it's not a starting lineup, like, I think that's really exciting. His ability is a pump and go threat. Like, if you play him with the bench, maybe there's like a non-shooter around him. Maybe it's Josh Hart. Maybe that mitigates that just a little bit. But if he's playing the 4 next to Cat and you have a clear lane, like I watched him just like in a highlight, just toast Jared Allen doing that. Like he can go after some of the more mobile bigs in the league and make them look stupid if he is a wide open lane. I don't really see how you guard that. To your point, it is a little bit of a middle ground option, because you lose probably some offense relative to Deuce, even if you can access other stuff. And defensively, even with the added rebounding, maybe you still lose a bit compared to Deuce. I know Tom Thibodeau wouldn't think that way, but tell me why you think that would be just a major issue defensively with him and Cat next to each other.
Yeah, great points for sure. I love everything that you said, and it's just too, I don't know. You can't have Towns, Brunson, and Yabusele be in your starting lineup, in my opinion, from a defensive standpoint. And even though I just talked about doubling down on your strengths, I think this is kind of taking that to its extremity, in my opinion. Like I don't think you can get past it. I don't think you can see, the rim protection would be brutal. Yabusele is not a good rim protector. Obviously, we know Towns is not a good rim protector. Yabusele overall has just been a bad defender. One of the if you look at his impact metrics on the defensive end of the court, it's brutal. It's really brutal. Don't if you look at it, like, wear shades or something, like when looking at an eclipse. Like, you don't look at it directly. It's not nice. And I think also, we talked a little bit about this kind of passing angle from Deuce McBride. He's also not really a good passer. Like you talked about a lot of his strengths as a roll man, kind of ghosting screens, quick to the rim, kind of everything he does is pretty fast besides passing. I don't know. His reads are also a little slow. And I think he would get better at it, as I don't think Nick Nurse had a very complex kind of offense. He was more of a Tibbs type in terms of like the sets that they ran in Philly with Guerschon. But I think he could get better at it, for just thinking about him as like kind of a European style player, which I think he is in a lot of cases. But I just think that between the defensive flaws in terms of having him and Towns play next to each other and all the potential miscues that we could imagine being on tape and us coming here and talking about it, that wouldn't be enjoyable. And I think, like you said, to me, it's better suited for a bench situation. You have Towns and Yabusele together for, a few minute stretches, and you kind of beat up on second units with those two, just like kind of causing fits on the offensive end, knowing that you're giving it back defensively. But for me, Brunson, Towns, Yabusele, that just can't work in the modern NBA on defense, like for 20 minutes a game.
Yeah, my only devil's advocate case, and to be clear, I'm going off of, this is extremely flimsy. This is not based on a lot of film study. This is purely based on like B-ball indexes, categorizations of his defense. He was an F graded rim protector. So, but he was an A- help defender. He was an elite roll defender. Like, he was very, very good at containing bigs, rolling to the rim, B+ defensive rebounder. Like, I do wonder if, again, this is from not watching a ton of Sixers games, and I'm going to bring on a Philly guest before the start of the season to do a deep dive on all this and kind of get the lowdown on Yabu. I wonder if at the 4, maybe they were a little bit better than at the 5. And he was just such a disaster at the 5 because he's just not an NBA level rim protector as a center, that brought down the stats so much that the overall looked bad. But as a 4, with obviously maybe that pitch stops with Cat next to him, because Cat is obviously not the best rim protector in the world, and OG can only do so much to cover that. I agree with you. I think there'd be major issues there, but I would not mind getting to those lineups occasionally. All right, guys, that is it for today's episode with XJ. As usually happens when he comes on, because I love talking to the guy, we went really long, so I split it into a part 1 and a part 2. We'll be back with him tomorrow to talk the 2 other obvious options for the next starters. Mitchell Robinson, who, if you follow practice rumors from a guy who was just on in Chris Persianen and some other people, you would know that he's now maybe expected to be a starter. So we go into what that will look like, what some of the potential drawbacks are. And of course, we talk, what if the Knicks just have the same starting lineup as last year? And is it possible that a different coach could better optimize a Josh Hart featured starting 5? We're going to do all that tomorrow on Locked On Knicks. Until then, be good. We'll talk to you really soon.